What's that from?
And all the girlies say I'm pretty fly for a white guy.
For a
Dun,
white
dun,
guy.
dun, dun, dun. That's staying in. And welcome to the Mediocre Photography Show. My name's Ben.
And my name's Jack.
And today we're going to be talking about creative block. I think a topic that's very relevant to both of us at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite difficult, obviously not being able to get out and do the things that we would normally be able to do. So, yeah, how you been? All right?
Yeah, I've been good. It's a Monday. We're actually recording on a when we said we would.
We're on time. We're doing this on schedule.
Yeah,
Oh, my Lord.
unbelievable. But yeah, no,
It's fine. It will come out late.
Yeah, obviously. But no, it's going well.
It's going
very
well. Yeah.
Well, first things first is constant. We have our
Yes.
our photos, a mediocre
do.
conversation, and
Mediocre conversation.
yeah.
So, let's just explain for those who may not have caught the last one what we're doing.
Okay, we're doing like a photo conversation every Monday where I'll randomly generate a word or a topic, and we have a week to we have a week to photograph that, or what we.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like a mini brief.
Yeah.
With a little deadline, but it just gets us off our arse, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it'll be quite interesting to see what happens. I've done something very weird, so I'm gonna send Jack mine now, and this is the first time that Jack's seeing
this
it
is
as well.
the first time. Yeah.
So this is going to be a little bit interesting.
What?
Yeah,
That's
a little bit different. Hey,
That's very different. I was not expecting that.
it was good, wasn't it? I very much enjoyed doing this. So let me read everybody what I wrote about it, and explain what this is. So constant, as Jack pointed out, a rather fitting word considering what the world is currently going through. Of course, my immediate thought was to go out and document the pandemic. But I'm tired of hearing about it, and I'm sure that everybody else is too. So I thought it'd be interesting to challenge myself to think outside the box. My immediate idea was to go on a circular walk every day and document the changes and pick a shot from that. Quickly dawned on me I could only use one photo, so we're off to a great start. Jack told me before the show that he's chosen two. But then I started thinking about circles, and these mysterious shapes. They don't have any end or beginning, they are constant. Interestingly as well, that if you measure the ratio of a circle's circumference by its diameter, you'll get pi, which is a mathematical constant, which is multi-layered. And so after walking around and taking these photos, I came across on my phone, I realised that we take circles for granted, and you don't see a circle when you're taking photos of a circle. That, you take a photo of a clock and it's a clock, it's not a circular clock face. Or you see a circular crockery, but you don't see the circle, you see the plate. And I needed more circles, and I needed nothing but circles, which sprung the idea that most of us hadn't done sprung the idea of doing something most of us hadn't done since the week one of an A-level in photography, and that is long exposure to create circles. These multitude of circles, they don't have any beginning or end, they merge into one, and the idea was achieved by strapping bike lights and onto a bike tire and using a willing volunteer to dance around my garden at light like she was trying to summon E.T. In this case, that was my sister. So thank you to my sister for helping me out. And a bonus project, I didn't have to leave my house either. This was all done in my garden.
Very well done.
There we are.
That is
my concept.
Very different. I was expecting something not as abstract.
Yeah, I quite like it though, and like I say, it was a bit of fun, and it's very different. It's almost kind of more artistic than it is photography, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that it fits it very well. I think that, you know, I've always been fascinated by circles. They're such interesting objects. It's always been something that I've wanted to work with, and I thought that this mini project would be a great idea and a great reason to do that.
I was about to say it is a bit arty. It also looks like a car advert, like a really sleek car advert.
Like a Mercedes Benz.
Yeah. But no, it's very good. And now I'm even more scared to show mine.
It's interesting. There's actually quite a lot from the series. I'll send you the whole thing afterwards.
Yeah.
There are some quite good ones in there. But as far as the circles were concerned, this was definitely my favourite.
Your favourite circle. Do you reckon you'll do more stuff like that? Abstract more?
Depends on the word. Long exposure you can only do so much of. One of the things that I have always wanted to try, which unfortunately I've never sort of been allowed to because it's a fire hazard, is the wire wall trick. Have you ever come across that? So what you do is you get a wire wall and you get a piece of string. You attach the string to the wire wall, set the wire wall on fire, and spin it around.
Right, that does seem a bit like a fire hazard to me.
It is a huge fire hazard because obviously as the wall burns, it flings off in red hot pieces. And you know Doctor Strange?
Yeah, oh yeah,
the portals. That it looks exactly like that. You can't really do it in a garden because, again, fire hazard.
You also need to be a responsible human being, Ben.
I'm responsible.
Yeah, with fire.
Yes.
But no, that's very good.
Yeah,
that's very good. So when I thought of constant, I thought of non-stop.
Right.
So I also thought, well, after the show, we said we'd done something completely different, and so I immediately went, right, what's the complete opposite of documentary, outside, landscape, and in colour? And so I went for a self-portrait in black and white indoors. And my constant, I've written here, I just started taking self-portraits, and then I realised that the constant is I'm always tired. I'm always so tired, and I've also had something in my head, like a nagging, that I wanted to take a picture of my eye, because I always get asked, have you been punched in the face because you look like you've got black eyes? And so I wanted to focus on that. And so so those two stood out to me, but the one on the messenger's left, so the one without my top on, because that's, if it's a black and white self-portrait, you've got to be topless.
You have to be naked.
Exactly. I like that one because you've got the veins on the side of my face that stand out quite well. It is a bit too, I think, in your face. It's like a bit harsh, whereas the other one is a bit more it's less obvious, I want to say.
Yeah, it's more melancholic.
Yeah, but no.
I really like them though. I think that I actually do prefer the one that is more shocking. I prefer the one with your eye. I think that there's a real harshness to it, and with the unironed linen in the background, the fact that your hair is so much darker than it is in real life, it ages you, which obviously that's what tiredness does. I absolutely love the light sort of coming across sort of your collarbone.
That's
your clavicle.
That's one thing I wrote was the highlights on the arm and shoulder.
It looks absolutely stunning. It's a great photo, very different again to what you normally do, but I think that's a good little theme, isn't it? The sort of working outside your comfort zone. And you we mentioned this in the last episode, didn't we? When we were sort of talking about if you ever do work just for the sake of doing it, if you work outside your comfort zone, and you said that you generally didn't.
No.
But I think that it's something that we should be encouraged to do more often, more frequently. Like, I wouldn't have discovered my passion, I wouldn't have discovered what I like doing if I hadn't have experimented and tried it first. And, you know, even going back to things that you don't often do, like you used to do portraiture, which you don't do as much anymore. I think that it is quite an important thing to explore and to work with.
Yeah, and I think it sort of, it fills me with confidence with moving forward as well, with like this idea of just having a random word and then working from that. It does allow you to like experiment and find new things.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So as we discussed, live on air, do you want to pick another word?
Oh, are we choosing it now, are we?
Let's do it now. Why not?
And the first word that come up is all right. It is the word redundancy, or should we say redundant?
Lol.
I don't mind that. Why are they all so depressing?
It knows.
It does know the time we're in. Right, redundancy, that's a good one. I don't mind that.
Yeah, I like redundancy.
God, these words have
I like redundancy a lot.
Been bangers. Anyway, we'll say no more about that.
Yeah, I think that'll be an interesting one. So, again, the one thing that we do need to say is that if you do want to get involved and you do want to submit to your photo conversation, to join in on our photo conversations, then go to hashtag a mediocre conversation. Hashtag that with the upload, and we'll see it, and you'll be featured. You'll get your work out there, which is always really important, and more importantly, we'll appreciate it.
Yes.
Cool. So, what are we talking about today then, Jack?
We are talking about creative blocks. That's a real while. Ironic. We were talking about creative blocks.
Why are we talking about creative block, Jack?
Because in a time like this, sometimes you can feel that you can't create work because of the situation, and and I think it's just a sign of the times. Sign of the times, is that right?
Yeah, I think that more and more people are responding to the virus in different ways, and kind of responding to quarantine in different ways as well. I think an observation that I made the other day, which I thought was quite interesting, was that people are responding to quarantine more than the virus itself. There's a huge amount of work coming out about, oh yeah, you know, this is what it's like to be locked indoors, which is, you know, absolutely great, and I have no problems with that whatsoever. But there isn't a huge amount of work going out there of people that I've seen anyway, that have either contracted the virus or have known someone that's got the virus or are talking about that, which I think is quite an interesting sort of observation, that you're looking at the effect, not the cause. And luckily I don't know anybody closely that has got the virus, but I think if touch wood we don't, but God would, but if we did, then that would be something that I would actually more work towards. Is looking at the cause of it, and that would be the only situation that I would personally make work about this. Sorry, I just thought that I would make that little observation before we started. I had a brain thought.
No, that's a good point. I didn't think of it like that. There isn't much on the coronavirus photography. It's a good.
No, it's interesting. But yeah. Anyway, So yeah, we're talking about creative block today, and I thought we would talk about creative block that we experience in uh, different ways. That again, going back to the time at university, I think it's fair to say that both of us got quite a lot of creative block
Mhm.
through various modules. Um, what was your experience with that? What can you give some examples of um, situations that you had at university?
Um, most of the modules, to be fair. Um, yeah, I think it's uni's quite difficult because obviously through first year and second year I was living at home, and so I always had, because obviously all my projects were like family based. I always had that sort of family to fall back on because I was at home.
Yeah.
And so not having them around, not saying the company wasn't incredible, but um, yeah, projects wise, I always had them to go back to and say, oh, who's this, why was that, and all of that stuff. And so a lot of the time I had to sort of, I didn't have the support that I had from the second year and first year. And so you sort of left on your own, which is quite daunting because I saw everybody else's work and I thought, oh god, this is going to be hell. And so yeah, but yeah, quite a lot of creative block, I have to say. But obviously, the support from peers and lecturers was yeah, quite valuable to me. So
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I remember the first time that I went through creative block, and that was actually the last module of first year. So in our first year, we had a module which was the first three modules that we had, the first three photographic modules anyway, because we had an essay as well, were quite directed. They were, you need to do darkroom work, you need to do work in the studio, you need to do a collaborative project. And then the fourth module, our final project, was do whatever you want. And all of a sudden, without that direction, I was like, whoa, okay. And I spent ages going through and trying to work out what I wanted to do. You know, I felt overwhelmed because I wanted to do everything. And I was like,
mm.
almost, because it was the finality of that year and that module was the final project. I was like, if I don't do it now, I'll never be able to do it. And I was like, hang on a second, that's not how that works. You know, I've got literally the rest of my life to go ahead and do it. But yeah, I mean, I really wanted to look at the relationship between science and art, and ended up looking at sounds. And it was an interesting project, and I don't regret doing it in the slightest. But it was a bit, you know, it took me a very long time to get going, and I think we all came across this, but I wish I had a couple more months on it. Um,
Yeah,
I wish that there was just a little bit more time that I could have gone ahead and done what I needed to do. But hey, I finished it. So that was the first sort of big instance of that for me. Was yeah, you get free reign, Ben. You can do
was it
whatever you want. And
yeah,
it
the
was like,
freedom? Yeah,
whoa, hang
too
on a
much.
second.
Well, yeah, I think what they were sort of expecting from us in first year is to sort of do those first three projects where we'd sort of been told what to do, and then all of a sudden, oh, we enjoyed that, so we're gonna
Yeah,
carry on doing that. You know, I enjoyed the studio project. We're gonna carry on doing that, and a lot of people in the first year sort of went, no, I'm gonna do something
yeah,
completely different.
and I think that was it. They weren't explicitly clear, and they dug themselves into a hole. They were like, we want you to do whatever you like, we recommend you do this though. and everyone didn't take the recommendation. They were like, well, we kind of expected that may have happened. So, you know, it's it was what it was. But I think that it's a good thing to have experienced, you know, being thrown into the deep end and gone, okay, make work about whatever you want. Because apart from one, which was a little bit more briefing orientated, all of the other projects were like that throughout the course, weren't they? They were, okay, you know, you have an end goal, and that end goal may differ. Like we had to make a book, or we had to do an exhibition, and that was the end goal that was differing. But at the end of the day, the projects themselves were self-led, more self-led.
Yeah. Well, I think that's sort of, I think, especially in second year, is that I think they were trying to sort of force us to find our own path with this sort of freedom to do whatever the hell you wanted. And I think, throwing us in at the deep end was certainly a good shout.
Yeah, definitely. But, you know, it was good. And at the end of the day, when you're working more in an editorial situation or in a kind of more fine arty situation, then you may not have a briefing to work with. And as you sort of progress higher and higher in your career, when you're getting Arts Council funding, when studios and galleries are financing you, then they're going to turn around and say, we trust your judgment, you go ahead and create work and we'll grant you for it. So yeah, and I think that it's going to be a huge pressure again if you know, a gallery turned around and said, we're going to give you £30,000 if you produce work, you can do whatever you want. And when you're staring down the barrel of that particular gun, I can imagine that that's even more pressure again. So basically what we're saying is that we're not privileged and have never heard of true strife. What about after university? Right now.
Well, like right now?
I mean, this is after university, right?
Right now. Yeah, I guess so. It's weird. It's funny enough, the constant thing that we've just done. That's the sort of main block that I have, I think, at the minute, creatively, is that I'm now doing work that I've been doing for years, and now I'm like, I want to explore like other forms of photography and other styles and stuff like that, and my brain is going, but no, you do one. And so I'm not, it's sort of limiting my sort of what I can do. It's limiting my perspective on photography, and so I think that is the main block at the minute, is the fact that I've got this like critic in my ear going, oh no, you've got to stick what you're good at. But then when, you know, I show this work and I do it, I feel a lot better for it. And so I think but that's the main block at the minute.
Yeah, well, this is what you said to me, wasn't it? That you were worried about putting work out for the first time in however long, and you were sort of, you know, you said that you were really nervous about even showing the constant photos, and I think that yours were a lot more personal and a lot more self-reflective than mine were. Mine was a lot more abstract, so I can kind of understand that. But I was kind of sat there being like, come on, stop being such a little bitch, just do it. But yeah, I think that when you haven't put work out there for a while, there's either an expectance from your audience or an expectance from yourself that they're going to be absolutely amazing, and you know, the next piece of work is going to be groundbreaking and it's going to blow the world away. And especially like, because with your last project, you were really proud of it, and you know, it's some of the best work that you've ever produced. And I think even though you may not openly admit it, you know that.
Nah.
And you're thinking that, well, that's quite a tough act to follow. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that there is an element of that as well. For me, the reason I haven't been producing as much work after university is simply because I've been very busy working full time. And
Mm.
I try to go out and photograph, as I've mentioned several times before. Dartmoor is my stomping ground, and it's very rare that I'll do kind of more serious project work outside of Dartmoor or outside of forests, which, they do take time to get there. It's hours drive depending on where I'm going, and when you've had a long day at work and you have a day off, then you just want to sort of have a day off. Trying to make time for the work that you're doing is very important. And if you want to be serious about that element of photography, then it's almost worth thinking about picking up less hours, as few hours as you possibly can, to sustain your living, and then giving yourself that extra day a week to go out and photograph, as opposed to working 5 days a week shooting seven, working 5 days a week shooting two, and
On a
burning you out.
12-day
Yeah,
week.
8 days a week, boys. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I found was a big struggle after university as well.
Do you want to know about more? Do you want to know about more
Yeah,
creative
go
blocks
ahead.
that I have? Because I have many. I've got plenty things wrong with me and my work, and so I've pretty much, for the listeners, viewers at home, I've got a list of well, I've just written a load of words down, and so I've said about the whole, in my own head, I can't make anything else but what I've already made. Um, it's also the fact that, oh, here we go. Personal issues. I found that this didn't affect me so much, or hasn't affected me so much after uni, but I think, especially with, I know one of your projects in particular, in, I want to say second year,
Yeah.
end of second year. It limits, sort of, you want to deal with that sort of having an effect on your creative work. And what I think it tends to do, well, it definitely did with my third year final project, but it sort of takes control of your work. But I think what the better thing to do is probably to sort out the personal problem and then
That's
come back to it.
interesting.
If you,
That's a very interesting.
if
I wasn't expecting you to say that, actually. Or
what
I wasn't expecting you to take that angle.
what the sort it out and
Yeah.
then, well, I think it's certainly an angle, but I think a lot of my projects I've sort of said I'll do it, but then I end up looking at my project at the end of it and going, oh, it is about that, isn't it?
Yep.
And it's sort of a bit of a subconscious thing. Yeah.
So, what about using photography as therapy or kind of a release mechanism? Then, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, that's what I mean in terms of, like, you've got a personal problem, like, I don't know, the death in the family, or you've fallen out with a good friend or whatever, and
What are
then
you trying to say there, Jack?
nothing. and and well, for me personally, and I know definitely for you, you sort of subconsciously bring it into your work when perhaps it's not the best idea to bring it in, is what I meant to say.
Okay, well that's very interesting. That I would actually have to disagree with that and
Right.
say that work that is emotionally challenged and emotionally challenged. I'm emotionally challenged. Work that's emotionally driven, I think,
Mm.
often is the most powerful work that you can hope to create. And yeah, I mean, I know that with my projects, again, the project that I did at the end of second year was very, very, very personal, and there was a lot of stuff that was going on in my life at that time. That is still some of the most powerful work that I have ever produced. And I do appreciate that there is an element of a bias towards that I personally associate those photos with things that are, that are powerful to me. And I look back over that project and I go, oh yeah, I remember what inspired that, and then I feel sad. But outwardly, and the feedback that I got from that work was definitely saying that it was a lot more powerful than other work that I've produced where I've been a little bit more detached from the subject. I think that goes with the project at the end of third year as well. It was mainly looking at Brexit and kind of my response to that, and something that I feel very powerfully about. Very powerfully. And again, the feedback that I got from that work was particularly powerful as well. Again, I don't know how much you want to talk about it. I know that it is something that's personal to you, but what happened through your third project, I think that definitely fueled the work, and the later shoots that you did from that were a lot more powerful than what you otherwise had done. I think
what I had originally intended it for it to be, and then all of a sudden this thing happens, and then your project takes a turn.
I think that you can't rely on something bad happening in order to create good work.
You say that, and there's a global pandemic going on.
Well, this is it. You can't. I don't know. Like
you're digging yourself a hole here, man.
I would never think of producing work about the fact that I don't know, my guinea pig died or something like that. Like that's just it's just a bit of a bullshit thing to work with. And I think that
I get what you mean. You shouldn't have like all these bad things and just make work about them to use it as a distraction.
I think both good photographers and the good editorial photographers and photographers that work to brief things, they always will be emotionally invested into their work, because you can't not produce good work without that. But you also don't need to start blubbing every time a wedding photographer takes the photo of kissing the bride and stuff like that. So I would kind of challenge that original statement to it as well. I think that the other thing to talk about is the fact that I have found personally photography to be an incredibly powerful tool of self-expression, and often something that I can turn to and that I can use to express myself in a way that I would otherwise not be able to vocally. And I think that for people that are going through a tough time, that is a particularly important thing as well. So, yeah. So, how do we deal with it then? What examples have you had when you have had creative block that you need to go ahead and cope with it, whether that be kind of now or outside of or when you're at university? Let's start with university.
Right. Okay.
Or kind of when you're studying. I should stop saying university because it is more broad than that. But you've got an impending deadline. You've got your lecturer hounding down your throat because they want an idea from you. They want to know what you're doing, and you're sat there going,
I probably I remember for my third year project, um, obviously I'd done it before, and all my best work has been the same sort of style as that. So perhaps, going back and looking back at your sort of, better work, and so I just went to my parents and grandparents and asked them, like, anything. You got anything? You got any stories that I would like? I'm interested in. And so that's how I went about that. Just going back to old work and sort of family support network and stuff like that. But yeah, that for me is sort of my go-to, is look back at my previous work.
Yeah, I think that's very important to do. I've always made work that's not been related or directly related to what I'm doing, because I find that helps me clear the head a little bit. And from that, I'll I don't know, say I've got a project that I need to do, and I'll not have any real idea for it, and I'll just go out and I'll make work, and then I'll be looking back through and I'll be like reviewing contact sheets and stuff like that, or scanning the negatives, and I'll be like, oh wait, hang on a second, that could lead to this, and then that's how I kind of get off on creative process as well.
Yeah.
I've always been quite lucky that I've had creative block a few times, but I often have creative block in the other end of the spectrum, where I have too many ideas and I need to narrow it down. And I need to cull ideas.
I know.
I don't know how to do that because I need all the ideas. And so, again, for me, going out and shooting allows me to kind of clear the head, and it is quite nice to not have the agenda with it. And I just go out and I make work, and I'm not thinking about, this needs to link to that, or, this needs to link to that political ideology, or whatever it is. So yeah, going out and shooting definitely makes a
Do you have a list of ideas then? Do you write down? Do you have like a notes page on your phone where you just think of an idea and you go, oh, I've got to write that down? Or do you just keep everything in your head?
More. Of course it is, because it's me. It's more complicated than that. I draw a lot of inspiration from pretty much everywhere I look. And I always work with my little triangle, which is technical, thematic, visual.
TTV.
TVB.
No, TV.
Technical,
What? TTV. V.
I can spell words. Technical is pretty straightforward, and that is often something that is decided quite early on in the project. But that is going to be what camera I'm using, what film I'm using, if I'm scanning them, if I'm printing them in a dark room, if it's going to be a book, if it's going to be an exhibition, if I'm printing it digitally, how am I going to be printing it digitally? And once that is decided, it's always kept consistent. With the thematic, so that's kind of how I describe it, the story behind the work, what I'm talking about, that comes from everywhere. And generally speaking, when I read books, when I read articles, I'll annotate them, and then I'll save them, and then I'll go back to them. And I'm constantly thinking about how I can combine ideas from things that I have read in order to create project work. And that's why my work often starts out very complicated, because I'm trying to mash all of these ideas into one project, and eventually, as the project gets refined, ideas get deleted and they get thrown out because they don't work. And as far as storing that is concerned, a lot of it is in my head, but I do often make spider diagrams, scribble in margins of books, bits and pieces like that. I'm quite lucky that I have quite a good memory. So if there's, I don't know, whatever, I'm doing a project on rewilding, then I can remember where I've read an article about rewilding foxes in Yellowstone National Park, and I can go back, and more often than not, I've had ideas kind of scribbled in the margins of that for an example.
Right.
And then the final one, which is visual, that comes from a lot of inspiration. Again, looking at photo books, looking at work that other people are producing, going on Instagram and stuff like that. My visual style is a lot more consistent than it once was, and generally speaking, it doesn't change a huge amount now.
One trick pony. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, it will change, and I will look at other people's work and go, oh yeah, I should try that and influence that, but the bell curve on that is a lot smoother than it otherwise was. What about you, Jack? Do you have a book of ideas? Do you?
No, because I know a lot of people that have like 5 or 6 projects on, not on the go, but they've got this list, and whenever they take a photo, they'll be there like, oh, that could relate to this project, and that can go on that project, and so they're sort of working with 6 projects at a time, if you get what I mean. And so I tend to only stick to 1 or 2, and I'll keep it concise because I can't do what you do and sort of have all these ideas in my head and keep them there. I can't do that. I have to get rid of some of them because I will just go mental. And so I'll keep maybe like a 1-2, but I've got a notes list with other ideas, which are like stupid and silly ideas that I probably will never ever get to. But then I'll have like 2 or 3 main ones in my head that I'm constantly thinking about.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's interesting.
And I don't. Unfortunately, I don't have any anagrams or whatever TTV and stuff like that. So
I never have more than 1 project on the go at once.
Really, do you not have like in the back of your head, in your back burner part of your brain?
I have ideas, but I don't. It's really bad. I'm saving them all for when I start my master's degree.
See, this is what do you not...
I'm not producing work for them at the moment.
Right, but if you were just say out shooting, and you've got that sort of idea in the back of your head, and you take this photo and you go, oh, this isn't actually going to work for this project that I'm currently working on, would you be like, oh, that would work for... No, you wouldn't.
The photo would be binned. It would go into the archive and not be used.
No. Do you not keep it, and then when you come to that project, you'll go back to that photo?
When the project starts, that's when I start producing work for that project.
Oh my god! Okay.
I don't know. I don't know why that's so surprising, because maybe it's. I have the fear.
It's because I don't do it. That's why it's surprising.
That my work is so visually similar to each other that if I went back and constantly was using other work, I would just be recycling old photos.
Right.
And
okay,
I have this huge archive of photos now that I need to that I have either been used in projects or are just redundant or duds. But when I create a new project, the work that I am producing is just for that new project, and it gives that work a lot more purpose. If I take a photo and it goes in the photo pile and it's never looked at again. There are like, for example, the constant that we use, the photo conversation. I'm never ever going to use those photos in anything other than this. And those
Okay.
photos will be archived and they will be forgotten about until I go through and, we'll be looking through photos one day and I go, oh, that was a fun thing that I did in the garden. But
Okay.
I'm not looking back over my archives to go, oh, I could reuse that, I could reuse that. Um, yeah, it's just
Oh.
I produce work in the moment.
Okay.
Um,
All right. It might be because well, what I tend to do is I'd just go out shooting, but then I'd sort of keep that picture in my head until I have the project, and I'll be like, right, I need to do that photo for that
oh yeah,
project.
I can see that, and that's
That
I
and
will
is that
photograph something and go, okay, that isn't quite right, or oh, that isn't um that hasn't worked for whatever reason.
hmm,
But in my mind's eye, I can go back and kind of revisit that and say,
okay?
oh well, um, I remember this photo that I took 6 months ago that was underexposed or had a scratch on the negative or something, but that could work quite well within that series. So I'll go back and try and reproduce that as closely as I can.
Okay.
But I wouldn't sort of take that negative, rescan it, and try and
Oh no, no, no.
magically
Yeah,
fix
no,
it.
that's
Or
not what I'm.
even if that photo
Yeah.
was good, I would still go out and reproduce that photo. And
Okay. Maybe it's my maybe it's because I obviously am very interested in the archive, and I like picking out old
hmm,
photos, and maybe it's that I'm just sort of.
yeah, yeah. So that was a bit of a tangent, wasn't it? Sorry. Um, about 20 minutes ago, we were talking about how we can deal with creative block before we went off on that quite a while ago. So yeah, obviously we spoke about sort of making work that isn't related. The other thing that I often do is I talk to other photographers, and I get there. I don't turn around to them and I'll say the broad question of like, oh, I'm having creative block. Woe is me. I'm such a failed artist. But I do often talk about with them about the project that I have got going on, either project ideas that I've got, and it helps me refine that as well. And I think that that is such an important aspect of being an artist and being a photographer, especially kind of more of a fine arty artist. That collaboration with other people and those peers just helps so much because they can see things in your work that you often can't because you're just too close to it. Do you do that? Do you collaborate? Do you talk with peers? If so, are there anyone particular people that you approach? Anybody that you try and avoid?
Yeah, there's this one photographer. No, I think uni it was sort of the peak of my communication with other
People.
fine art photography. Yeah, well after uni it just went like that because I tend to stick with the same people. I don't tend to go out, but I do like the group crits where there's, as you were saying, there's different views, there's different perspectives. There's sort of they've sort of like they sort of just like grab your collar and then pull you back because they're like, yeah, you're getting a bit too close. Um, but no, uni was good, and group crits were good for that. Um, and they definitely helped. Certainly get ideas out of my head that perhaps weren't best for the project, but I'd come up with an in my excitement gone, oh, this is a sick idea. Should I do it? And everybody's gone, no, it's a shit idea. Don't do it. And I'm there like, okay, well, that's 5v1.
Yeah,
Perhaps it's not a great idea.
yeah. Um, I think that should be. What were your thoughts on after uni? Have you ever thought about joining kind of like photography communities, joining
Groups.
groups, creating a network, perhaps a collective in the southwest?
I haven't. Because I don't. sometimes I subconsciously sort of don't take ideas on. I sort of like someone says an idea to me or something, some way I can improve my work, and I sort of not ignore it, but I take it on board and then go after I've like I turn my back and I go, that's a rubbish
Well,
idea.
I think that is quite an important distinction to make. Is that it's not always not always crucial that you have to listen to every bit of advice that you get.
No, of course not, because at the end of the day, it's your
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
you're the best
Yeah.
person to decide. That's the other thing as well. That's what stops me from going to people, is that it's I know them. I sort of for some reason want it to be a sort of anonymous, so they don't know me, they don't know my previous work, they don't know what I'm thinking, they just know the work and what it's about, and they have that to go on.
Yeah, I can see that. But then the other kind of problem that you would get with that is that if you have people that don't know you and don't know your work, then they may not necessarily understand what you're trying to achieve from it. So that can kind of work both
Okay,
ways as
yeah.
well.
A lot of things for me is sort of that leap that you have to take when either it's mainly like doing work or sharing work, but it's sort of that like it's the thoughts in your head that go, oh, don't do it, don't do it, and then once you do it, they're gone. So you sort of just have to say like, oh, 3, 2, 1, let's
Yeah.
do it. And so I have genuinely, this is not a joke, I've genuinely started just saying 3, 2, 1 when sending that picture to you, when setting up the tripod and taking the picture. I genuinely said to myself 3, 2, 1, because then you deal with the consequences later. And the good thing about I say I want things to be more anonymous. That's just me personally, but I know that the sort of creative industry, especially from a fine art photography, sort of is they're very, what's the word? They're very supportive. So I have a feeling that I've sort of started on taking on that thinking, or that thought that if I do put out work, it's gonna it's gonna be somewhat supported. Don't smile at me like that, because I know you're the only person that criticizes my work. But that's also a thing. That's also another thing. You've got to pick and choose, because you don't want.
So you just surround yourself. What I'm hearing here is that you just surround yourself in this little Jack bubble of positivity and candy floss and happiness.
Because I have
and
to.
then I'm just there, just constantly beating you down.
No, you're like knocking at the glass. I'm in a dome at the minute, and you're like knocking at the glass.
With a little message that just
Jack,
says,
Jack,
rethink your sequence.
Yeah, but the thing is, sometimes I say like everybody's really supportive and stuff like that, but you do have to pick and choose. You have to choose. Sometimes you have to choose people that are strong enough to disagree with your work to make it better. So sometimes I open the glass door and let you in just to rant at me for 20 seconds, and then I'm like, and you're done. You're back to knocking at the glass dome like, your sequence is rubbish, change it up, I like this photo but I don't like that photo, just switch them out.
Yeah.
But it is that massive, that leap that you sort of have to take. You just get, deal with the consequences later and just go for it, because people are going to slate you and not slate you.
Unfortunately, art is subjective. And I was having this conversation with my sister the other day, actually, and she's an artist as well, and I was saying, well, if I had it my way, no one would ever produce anything other than landscape or documentary landscape work. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. And,
No.
I get the BJ.
Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in. Just like slaughtering all the portrait photographers and all of that.
Unfortunately, they exist. No. I get the BJP through every month, and more often than not, I look at the work that's coming out there, and I can absolutely see its merit. And obviously, if it's got into the BJP, it's going to be damn sight better than whatever I'm doing. But it's just not my cup of tea, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think that when you're criticizing work and when you're um, being criticized by people as well, you always need to have that in the back of your head. And I always do that. Like whenever somebody has come to is coming to give work to me and said, "Oh, what do you think about this?" I will always look at that as objectively as I possibly can. I hate architectural photography. I think it's the most boring subject in the entire world. But if one of my friends turns around to me and says, "Oh, what do you think of this sequence?" Of course, I'm not going to be like, "Well, it's terrible because they're all buildings. Get some trees in there." You have to say, you have to get into the mindset of that architectural photographer and look at that in that way. So yeah, I think criticism is taking and receiving criticism is a subject for another time, though. I think that that could very quickly turn into another tangent, and I fear that we're already drawing a little bit towards the time that we have together today.
Right, are we gonna summarize and end it?
Well, no. Hang on. There's one more thing that I have on my list that you like doing when you're feeling particularly uncreative.
Be careful.
Jesus. We're also taking vacancies for another co-host, and that is.
Well, you can start that bit again if you want.
No. We're keeping all of that in. Jack likes making music videos.
Oh yeah.
Go on, talk through your music videos, Jack.
Right. So sometimes when I'm not feeling so creative, I should really start by saying that I'm hoping, like lots of other people, picture stuff in my head.
What? Like picture stuff in your head?
No, they don't picture stuff in my head. I picture like.
I do not want to know what is being pictured in your head.
Like I picture scenes like from any Wes Anderson movie, Paris, Texas, Nebraska's another banger. But those sort of like, because that's the sort of style I shoot in, and I sort of get that in my head, but then I listen to music and I sort of, it's going to sound really, really sad, but I like pretend that I'm directing the music video, and it sort of gets this sort of the creative cogs in my head turning, and I'm there like, oh, that's a good picture, that's a good visual. And then all of a sudden I'm taking photos. But for me, music is very important in taking photos anyway. But
it distracts you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. That's definitely it's been an interesting chat, hasn't it? It's gone to places that I didn't think it would go.
No,
it's
true.
Yeah, it's been good. So yeah, let's summarize quickly what we've discussed today. So I think the differences between creative block at university, creative block IRL is that university you have a lot more time pressure. Often you will be thrown in a deep end with projects that you are expected to produce something to a certain level or a certain type of thing that you may not necessarily like working with. Or similarly, you are just given free rein and going from there. When you're working IRL, you don't have that time pressure, but it means that it's a lot more difficult for you to stay motivated. And again, that kind of drives into not knowing what you necessarily want to do. If you're not confident with an idea, then you may not be motivated to do it. And you can deal with it by just going out, taking photos is my top tip. Talking to other photographers as well is another top tip. Go on, what are your top tips, Jack?
Speak to other people.
Speak to other people.
I've just realised I'm just saying your ones because they're exactly the same as me. But yeah, speak to peers, even like your family, even though they might not be creatively. Well, they might not be creative, full stop. But it's just that support that you might need just to tip you over the edge.
Yeah.
Into creativity, not to tip you over the edge into anything else.
Yeah. Interesting. Right. Well, we'll call it a day there. Oh, final thing to, of course, mention. Mediocre photo conversation. The new word is redundant.
Or redundancy. Yeah, redundant.
So yeah, use hashtag a mediocre conversation if you want to get featured for that. And yeah.
Can I leave with a quote? I think this should be a thing now. I'm going to leave you with a quote.
Since when? When have we ever left with a quote before?
We haven't discussed this or ever, but I saw this quote when I was doing my research, and I think it's come from a place that creatively you're not expecting it. But do we want to sign off and then I'll say the quote?
Yeah.
Okay. Go on then. What's your Instagram, Ben?
You've thrown me. I was in the swing of things. Right.
Oh well we can.
If you like, no.
I've got a quote. I've got a quote.
Say a quote, then we'll do it.
Right.
And I'm gonna have to work out how to cut around this.
You'll probably cut this out anyway. This won't make the final edit, but who cares? I think it's a great quote for this sort of thing. A famous creative, Mike Tyson, once said,
God.
"Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth."
If you like the podcast, do consider subscribing. If you really liked it, consider liking it. We'll see you next week.
Whoa! At Jack Henderson Photo.
Oh, yeah.
Follow me.
Follow him at Jack Henderson Photo. Follow me at Ben Bullman Photo. Follow the podcast at
The Mediocre Photo.
Bye.